Alright, everybody, how we doing today? So, everyone knows that RUPTLY, or RT, is sometimes referred to as Russia Times, because they do often favor stories that favor Russia, but they are a verified source. However, to clarify, I'm going to counterbalance one of their pro-Russian stories that does need it to be discussed. Drones, robots, lasers, supersonic gliders, and other high-tech arms. Putin wants the Russian military to be up to any future challenge. Yeah, except that their overall GDP growth represents 2.67% of the world's economy. They have less GDP growth than the state of California, possibly even less than the state of Rhode Island. So, I'm afraid to say that, with them being literally like 7 tiers behind us in growth, I don't think Putin would be able to keep up that kind of competition with the United States for long. Cold War II is going to be a short one, folks. It's going to be very short indeed. But the Russian military will be going all-out sci-fi, with Vladimir Putin saying the plan for boosting the armed forces until 2033 shows focus on AI and weapons based on new physical principles. With the introduction of a whole range of state-of-the-art arms in recent years, Russia has been able to make a step forward compared to the world's other military powers, Putin said during a meeting of the Russian Security Council on Friday. The tally of the newest weapons and hardware in the possession of the country's armed forces and navy is currently over 68%, he said, adding that they must be increased by at least 70% and maintained at that level. The program for the development of the Russian military-industrial complex until 2033 will be approved next year for Russia to remain ahead of its rivals, the president said. The emphasis in the plan must be on advanced high-precision weapons and means of aerospace defense, the active use of artificial intelligence, the production of military hardware, the president said. The line of unmanned reconnaissance and attack aircraft, laser, and hypersonic systems weapons based on new physical principles, as well as robotic systems capable of performing diverse tasks on the battlefield, should be expanded. Now, if you see new technology emerge, and new military technology, that should encourage investment, possibly even from other countries, resulting in of course, increased GDP growth, because that's what investment does. It fuels the growth of GDP. However, one has to imagine the cost of this sort of project, and while it may grow GDP, would that justify the overall expenditure of currency? Keep in mind that in Soviet Russia during the communist regime, Khrushchev tried to buff up his military in a similar maneuver, and his agricultural policies and agricultural sector ended up suffering for it. So you gotta wonder if Vladimir Putin has a blind side where he might accidentally wind up allowing some other area of his financial policy to suffer in favor of his growing military-industrial complex. In fact, sometimes I wonder how we even maintain ours. Personally, I think he's nuts for even wanting to try this. Russia requires these futuristic arms because the world is facing serious challenges and threats, while military technologies are developing rapidly, providing for tougher competition in the area, Putin explained. The U.S. withdrawal from the INF Treaty banning the U.S. and Russia from fielding in Europe ground-based missiles with a range between 500 kilometers and 5,500 kilometers under an invented pretext has become a significant blow for the arms control system. Russia must be able to forecast the effect that this move will have on the international situation and adjust its military potential accordingly. NATO's buildup near the Russian border in attempts to militarize space are also a cause for significant concern, the head of state said. They're in the army now. Russia has already successfully tested its avenged hypersonic glider, which is launched by silo-based ICBMs. Some sources claim this technology is about to be put in service by the end of the year. Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, which are fired from aircraft, have also been shown to the public. Those weapons are said to be able to bypass any existing air defense due to traveling 5 times faster than the speed of sound. Work on the ship-based Zircon hypersonic system is currently underway. One of the weapons based on new physical principles is the Peresvet laser system, which began trials with the military last year. The hardware is highly classified, but experts believe it can be used as a jamming device or to neutralize enemy targets, including cruise missiles and satellites in orbit. The assembly of serial Su-57 fifth-generation fighter jets began earlier this year. The cutting-edge aircraft actively employs AI and was even described as a flying robot a few months ago. A trial version of the Su-57 performed a spectacular joint flight with Russia's new Okhotnik heavy drone, which can be used for both surveillance and attack missions. Now, one possible scenario one might imagine is that Russia sells the new some products of the new technology to cover the cost, so that they at the very least, break even, which would be very economical to do so. So they keep most of the planes, but maybe sell less than a third. But then another country buys that technology, and then that country sells it to us, and then we have it too. That is not a difficult scenario to imagine. What is also not too terribly difficult to imagine is that Russia's GDP growth could see a massive increase due to investments in these technologies. The means of production increases, and then the purchasing power of the ruble goes farther. Hence, an increase in GDP. It still wouldn't come anywhere near the U.S. Like I said, we're 7 tiers or so above Russia. But maybe that could go from 7 to maybe 4? 4, maybe 5. I'm not an economic expert, but I'm well versed in the basics. I know how it all works. It's the kind of research that literally anyone could do. But to truly understand it, you also have to learn how to try and apply it. There's actually a great game to play if you got the time called Politics and War. Give that a quick plug. Politics and War is essentially just a browser-based RTS game where you create your own nation and try to manage its GDP growth, its population, and go to war with other nations. If you want to know how to apply basic economics, that'll teach you most of the ins and outs. I don't know if that was the intention of the designer, but that's what it does. So, there are many ways this could turn out good for Russia. But there's also just as many ways it could turn out bad. Like I said, the cost of the instant growth of military technology could end up being way too high. They may not even be able to recoup the loss. Some other area of their financial market would have to suffer as a result. Again, cite Khrushchev in the failure of his agricultural policies while seeing the growth of the Soviet military. We could see a repeat of that specific scenario. Putin's walking on a very narrow cliff, and he could fall off into the abyss if he's not careful, making Cold War II very short. But if he succeeds, then we could literally see a second Cold War. Again, Cold War II. And I'm sure the banter will be just as good as it was before. I was actually born just soon enough to actually hear some of the leftover banter. I was born in like 1990. I remember Cold War banter fondly. It was very entertaining. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, to that aspect of it if it does happen. But the rest of it is just going to be just as stupid as the first time. Basically, nations pussyfooting around each other because they're too afraid to go to war because their weapons are too powerful. Essentially. It was really just a great big game of chicken. And this is probably going to be a very similar scenario. So this is definitely, I definitely think this is a make or break sort of situation here for Putin. It'll be interesting seeing what happens in the coming years after this announcement. Anyway, peace.